deep within every one of us is the desire for love. And there is nothing more attractive than the thought of an elixir that can bring that love into being. To many it can be a magic potion that has the power to change our consciousness, to change the way we see things, desire things, how we want to be. Love has been here as long as we have existed.
I'm very much enjoying exploring all my relationships with things, with people, in moments, with time, with abstract concepts.
It is a potion that has been written about since man first recorded his thoughts. It is a way of thinking, a way of seeing, a way of being.
There are a lot of people who've been placed in positions of great power who wish to spread light, who wish to spread love.
It feels like my heart is like slowly and gently opening and more. And in this exercise where we were connecting sex, love and spirit, I experienced myself finally landing in myself and finding myself into a service to the whole humanity, and that he was next to me and that he found himself into the service of the same thing. So we were together standing in front of the world ready to share our love.
It's called the art of Tantra. There are many today who are again searching for this mystical path, hoping through knowledge of the ancient ways for the ability to reawaken that innermost power. Built within every one of us is a divine essence, a pure river of love that may have been suppressed. If one can rediscover this mystery, then most of the problems of our present time may be resolved, and mankind may find a way to move forward into an enlightened age, a time when there is no war, greed, or anger, when our true purpose on earth can be revealed. What if there is a way to change thousands of years of conflict? At this critical time in the 21st century, when with the Earth's resources rapidly running out and the threat of global warming hovering to eliminate mankind, maybe we can still make that profound change, to reawaken to the belief that we are not merely physical, but spiritual in nature, and that our purpose is not conquest, but coexistence. And the basis of that coexistence is the simplest of all things, love. But how do we change for the better, more powerful, more successful future? How do we change our life? In this program, we're going to meet those who believe they hold that secret, whose sole purpose is to make that change possible. They are working to revive this ancient art of Tantra and to present it to the 21st century as a way out of our present downward spiral.
Tantra, in essence, is about the meeting of the right and left sides of the brain, which you could think of as the masculine aspect within ourselves, the feminine aspect within ourselves, logic and love. And it's said that when the right and left sides of the brain meet, there is an actual physical metamorphosis that happens, and that the brain will resemble a swan in flight. Therefore there's a term Paramahansa, which means swan in flight, to denote an awakened being. But it's all about the meeting of the right and left sides of the brain. And that will come about either through practices of meditation which unite your own inner male, inner female aspects, or with a partner, with a love partner, where you're using the other as a mirror, reflecting your own inner man or inner woman.
So Tantra can be seen as an expression of love. It can be as little as having compassion for another, or as high as being in cosmic space with a partner or lover. For this reason, Tantra is aligned with sacred sexuality. Yet Tantra exists on all levels. For that of a mother for her child, a teacher for the pupil, the artist for the observer, The combinations are endless. What is different is to what level one desires to rise, and once achieved, for what purpose. In this journey, one may achieve the ultimate bridge between heaven and earth, spirit and matter. And there is another aspect, that of Eastern influence. Today, sculptures of Shakti and Shiva can be found in many homes. Not only do they fill our curiosity for Eastern culture, but there is a growing belief that our homes are protected and blessed by these objects. But to understand what Tantra really is, we need to go back in time and try to discover its roots.
Nobody knows the origins of Tantra, basically. Tantra's been around for many thousands of years. The word Tantra primarily means texts that have practices in, and those texts are often a couple of thousand years old. But they're based on an oral tradition that goes back several thousand years before that. So you can't give a figure to the origin of Tantra, but if you had to give one, it'd be 6,000 to 8,000 years at least. There are certainly pictures of yogis sitting in what look like meditation postures. There's carvings that are probably about 6,000 years old. So Tantra and yoga, and historically yoga is a part of Tantra, is at least 6,000 years old. And because it's to do with the discoveries about energy and about the human body and about breath, the very basic things of what it is to be a human being, it'll go back to the beginning of humankind, really.
Tantra is a state of awareness. It's a way that creates a form of energy, be it in dance, breath or posture. As one begins to learn its secrets, a path of contemplation opens, and one is transformed to a higher level of one's soul identity. But how does it fit in with our Western culture?
The Western culture has been circulating primarily around the Judeo-Christian outlook, and the Judeo-Christian outlook has had a lot to do with repressing sexuality, with viewing sex as separate from spirituality. And so in the Victorian times, when the first tantric scriptures were translated into English and brought over and people started becoming aware of it, they were saying, oh my God, this is considered a spiritual path, and they let you have sex and they do all kind of weird practices, and there was an incredible kind of interest and fascination about it, and people became so fixated on the sexual aspect they forgot completely about the spiritual angle, or the meditative angle, you could say. And because the Western culture was going from sexual repression towards hedonism and towards licentiousness and pornography and all of that, which has evolved over time since the Victorian times, they simply picked up Tantra as a kind of excuse, if you like, to go into that hedonistic exploration. And it's a misinterpretation of Tantra, because the time when Tantra developed, it was much more free. So in a sense, people were much more tuned in to the fact that sex and spirit are integrated and one, and they could easily use the sexual energy as fuel to open up different dimensions within themselves, which included the awakening of spirituality.
So we are back to the Western view of Tantra, not as a form of spirituality, but more sexuality. We see Tantra as a way to harness our sexual desires. Maybe in a world often devoid of love, Tantra feels the need to return to the child within, to cast off, even for a short while, the stresses of being adult, and to return to a more carefree state of being.
Tantra is part of the shamanic culture. That means the tribal culture of people living close to nature. So like the Native Americans have their Tantra, it's called fire medicine. And obviously that is still existing in North America. And as far as we know, the Celtic tribes had their fire medicine, and so did the peoples in Siberia, in India. So in India it was the Dravidian people, the tribal people, who had the tantric traditions and the tantric worldview. Then the Aryan invasion came, so Hinduism came, and the Tantra part went underground. It's like when Christianity came to this country, the Celtic traditions went underground, became witchcraft. And it seems like in this country the sexual traditions did not survive, except very, very secretly. And then the church was so anti-sex that they got turned into black magic, the Black Sabbath, all of this kind of, well, it's anti-tantric propaganda, really.
But here we can be forgiven for believing that all Tantra comes from India. Some find the origins of Tantra in Tibet.
In India and in Tibet, the sexual traditions lived underground and then re-emerged in the tantric texts, because Hinduism is simply among the big religions the most tolerant. And so these sexual practices, or energetic practices really, practices with love, sex and life energy, survived in India and Tibet.
And Tantric Buddhism, at least the way it is made itself accessible, as opposed to many other tantric teachings right now in the world, seems to be one of the most clear teaching with a lot of integrity. It's time-honored. It is something very trustworthy and safe.
There were two basic religious approaches that existed at that time. There was the phallic worshipping religion, and there was the mother goddess worshipping religion. At a certain point, those two came together, and that became Tantra. So it's looking at God as half male, half female, which is known as Ardhanarish Vara. It's a pre-Aryan spiritual approach. When the Aryans came, there was a tendency to want to suppress the original religion. And so even though they did integrate it into Hinduism, it was never fully accepted, you could say. There was always a tendency to want to control that kind of pagan-sounding spirituality. And then it also happened at another time that you had a kind of Hindu chauvinism that came into play that wanted to suppress the tantric element in the society. So it had to go underground. And there was also the fact that Mohammedans did come and invade India. They had an influence in suppressing Tantra as well. So you have the fact that Tantra has always been there, and at times it's been very much on the surface of the society, and at times it's had to go really underground. In our day and age, in India, many people are not aware of the glory of their own culture.
So we are told Tantra is a safe way to find that balance of the spiritual soul energy. But it can be confusing. The Tantra teachers show us many ways to unlock our full spiritual potential. Tantra is not just love-making, far more than that. It takes in every spiritual discipline. Tantric practices such as breath and posture, correctly aligned, it is said our breath activates the Shakti Shiva energy that flows from our base to the crown chakra. In our daily life it is often difficult to have trust, but Tantra requires trust, total, complete harmony.
coming across Tantra was a beautiful experience for me because of it, the sense that it's so deeply rooted in the whole world, the physical and the non-physical, and the meeting point of these two worlds.
In India there are very beautiful temples, tantric temples, which have on the outer walls sculptures which are depicting many different aspects of daily life, including the sexual aspects. And in the inside of the temple it's completely bare. So many people have wondered, what was that all about? Why did they do that? Why do they have all these sexual positions on the outside of the temple? And Osho described it very beautifully. His grandmother was from Khajuraho, so he visited Khajuraho a lot. He meditated a lot in the temples, and he explained it in the following way, as much as I remember. I heard him say that the adept would come and want to be initiated into Tantra, and they would approach the master, and the master would ask them, meditate on those sculptures, almost like you would look at pornography, and just go on meditating on it and see what is arising in you as you witness those sculptures, and keep witnessing what is arising, and go on and on meditating on the sculptures, and finally when you are no longer affected by those sculptures, when you can take it with equanimity, then you would be allowed into the interior of the temple, which is completely empty. So this has deep symbolism for the Tantra path. That in Tantra we need to honor where the person is at. So if somebody comes to Tantra and they're really interested in pornography, we can use that as a meditation. In other words, we can bring awareness to it. And we can help the person move through that door into that inner sanctum of deep understanding, wisdom, silence, and bliss. Moving through the door of pornography, for example. In our days we would refer to it as that. And there are very beautiful meditations which use that principle, but they're done in such a sacred way, you couldn't really call it porno. But it is using that principle that the man very naturally is attracted to looking at women naked. The woman is very naturally attracted to being seen by men. We can take these two facts and we can make a meditation out of it.
Sexuality within Tantra is a very interesting subject. A lot of people get drawn to Tantra for sexuality, but if they engage in real Tantra, the sexuality the way they knew it is not going to exist for them anymore.
There's a very beautiful tantric technique which is called Atisha's heart meditation. It's from a tantric master named Atisha who lived in Tibet. And the technique is that you breathe the suffering of humanity into your heart and you breathe out love and compassion. And this is what I would call a quintessential Tantra meditation, because one of the meanings of Tantra is transforming poison into nectar. So we take whatever the poison is. It can be anything. It can be my own suffering. It can be the suffering of the people close to me, like colleagues or friends or relatives. It could be the suffering of the whole world. The heart principle is ultimately completely transformative because it is connected to love. And love is everything.
So basically when you come to Tantra, it's mostly about raising your energy, because our energy levels are quite low and quite suppressed. So we do a lot of exercises to raise our energy, but at the same time our consciousness rises. And in Tantra we say that basically we live our lives based on the pleasure principle. But sometimes we have pleasure from negative things. So through raising our consciousness, we actually become aware how we stop or how we limit our lives, what negative patterns we put basically our pleasure in. So we can stop doing it and we can basically launch ourselves more into really pleasurable things that bring us more energy and more consciousness.
So when we tune into the principle of the heart, we're tuning into love. And love will transform any poison into nectar. So when we use this meditation, we're breathing in the poison, the problem, the suffering deep into the heart, and we're allowing the heart to do its thing, which is just to be in a state of love. Therefore, we're able to breathe out love and compassion. As we go on practicing that, the suffering, whatever it is transformed.
Being in a Tantra group is a very good way of allowing myself to be intimate, and sometimes I've had relationships coming out of the Tantra groups, not very long-term relationships, but that they have happened, and I found that even though I'm not in a long-term relationship, and I don't have kids, which I think are kind of two things that kind of define a woman, you know, like she's a mother or she's a wife or a girlfriend or something, then through doing the Tantra work, I do feel a woman, and that's something I remember in my teens and my 20s that I didn't really. So I can express myself much better as a woman, and I feel fulfilled in a way, even without the need for having regular sex. That would be nice, but even without, just allowing that sexual energy to run through my body, I feel fine. Yeah.
That human beings circulate around basically the desire to experience bliss on an ongoing basis. And we do have bliss receptors in our body and in our brain. And if we can't find the bliss internally through our own internal chemicals, then people will have a tendency to search for external chemicals or drugs which will give them the bliss factor. Tantrikas have been researching into this whole arena for thousands of years, and there is a term which is used in the East which is called soma. Soma is the drug of immortality, and I'd like to just explain about that you know, for many years people have been searching for that famed immortality drug which was said to exist physically on the outside in terms of a plant. There may have been different medicinal plants which were used to help induce ecstasy states, but there is also an internal drug that induces ecstasy states in us, which is in the brain, and which in my understanding gets activated at the time of death. And we can learn to activate it also in deep states of sexual union, in deep states of meditation, where you go to the point where you almost embrace a death-like state. It's called samadhi in the East. You come into a state of samadhi, and in that state the soma gets activated and starts dripping. It's said it drips from the crown chakra, and you can actually taste it in the roof of your mouth. And it's a kind of sweetness which is beyond description, fills the whole body. And in my understanding, this soma is what is activated at the time of death, which gives people this feeling of euphoria and love. But we can learn or train ourselves to access it whenever we want by going into very profound states of meditation. Whether that's in sex or simply alone, doesn't really matter, but it is available to us.
In my teens and my 20s, I was actually quite afraid of sexual energy, and it was something that I was curious about, but I never had any relationships, and I was very, I guess as a teen I was a bit sort of overweight, and I was wanting to hide myself, and I used to wear very baggy clothes and jeans and things, and really not want to be a woman in a way. And I did a very sort of masculine career. I was an engineer and then an accountant, so a very masculine type of profession. And the older I got, the worse it became, and I was still a virgin, and I thought, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Is it ever going to happen for me? Do I go to a bar or something, or how is it going to happen? My friends were getting, off with partners or getting married, and I still had never had sex. And at this stage, I was in a successful career, and I decided, okay, I'm going to quit, and I'm going to go to India. And so I stayed in a spiritual community, and at that point I discovered Tantra, and I did a couple of Tantra workshops there. So that was my first experience, and that was fairly mixed. And then I stayed about 9 years in India, and then when I came back to England, a friend recommended I came and did some Tantra with School of Awakening, and she'd actually met her partner through the school, so I thought, oh great. By this time I had sex. I had several lovers, but I still felt quite inadequate. I didn't really know quite what to do or techniques, and still quite a lot of issues and shame from my family background, and brought up as a Catholic, and the whole shebang really. So in the first Tantra group I did with the School of Awakening, we were doing a structure, I think, on the first evening, and even though there was no sexual contact, not even any physical contact, it was generating a lot of sexual energy in the room. It was a sort of a structure, focusing on the male energy and the female energy. And I found that I was getting more and more freaked out. I was just sitting there, and I was kind of frozen. And I thought, oh my God, I can't even deal with this amount of sexual energy. And I was like, oh God, even after all this time in India and blah, blah, blah. And I was feeling quite bad about myself. And then the following day, there was a group sharing, and I put my hand up and said, well, I froze in that exercise last night. And many other people have been very ecstatic and seemed to be orgasming or whatever. And I was just thinking, oh God. And I put out this fear, and Sri actually said, well, who else froze or found that difficult? And loads of other people put their hands up, and I thought, thank God for that, I'm not the only one. And so I think by acknowledging that fear and then recognising that I wasn't the only one, that was a huge benefit. I could relax more into it. And that was about four years ago, I suppose, and I've done quite a few Tantra groups with Sarita since then, and now I'm a lot more comfortable. I mean, I might still get a little bit on edge at times, but I can deal with the sexual energy, and I can enjoy it. I can feel it in my body, so I feel that's been a huge change for me.
Tantra calls the male principle Shiva, and the female principle Shakti. Shiva is consciousness, Shakti is energy. Tantra describes the meeting of energy and consciousness that gives birth to reality as the sexual embrace of energy and consciousness, of Shiva and Shakti. And that is what Tantra studies, how to become Shiva and Shakti. First of all, in a meeting between man and woman in real life, and then internally the alchemy of male and female halves coming together. But what it's about is energy and consciousness meeting and creating reality, that each Tantriki learns to create their reality in each moment.
Shiva and Shakti can tell us how to balance, how to work with dualities, because we always live in duality. A lot of people in Tantra focus on the metaphor of a couple in sexual embrace as being the metaphor for Tantra, but those dualities exist in everything we do, from doing and being, space and form, masculine and feminine, obviously. All the time we're always in relationship with something, and always working with duality, and that's what I see.
And within any tantric space, we cultivate both sides, Shiva and Shakti, feminine and masculine side. It's also a practice within which you're making love to yourself. And specifically, how you can do that is that there are certain chakras which are charged positively, some are charged negatively, some are coming out, some are drawing the energy in. You can do a practice that would put the serpent in a way that it would be going through yourself on this energy level, through masculine and feminine energies, and just pick up. There are Tao practices where you imagine a lingam in the forehead, whoever you are, and you imagine the connection of the lingam, let's say if you're a woman, into your yoni, and the whole orbit. You can do it by yourself, or you can do it with a partner, which is even more powerful, because there is a natural charge there, natural magnetism that you kind of get for free.
What really does interest me in terms of Tantra, and a lot of certainly Western presentations of Tantra do focus quite a bit on relationship and sexuality. But if you apply that formula then to those areas, and it's a, we're all interested in relationship and sexuality. It forms a large part of our lives, and we all want to know how to do it better, how to heal problems in our relationships, how to find more satisfaction in them. And I think just that one piece of knowledge, that one formula, could really help so many people. And there's a lot that I've learned from the Tao, the simple, where they often talk about masculine in terms of fire, feminine in terms of water. And so you get basic things, fire heats up quickly, but you can blow it out quickly. Water heats up slowly, cools down slowly. So you apply that to relationships, and women and men's most common complaints about the sexual relationships, and what people are often complaining about, women are complaining about, it was all too quick, there wasn't enough time to sort of, there wasn't enough foreplay. The things that men and women misunderstand about each other are often just basically due down to that basic misunderstanding that masculine and feminine energies are different.
Doing my first Tantra workshop was a just wonderfully inspiring, inviting, held, grounding, juicy experience. I went there alone. I went there with an intention of fully experiencing as much as I possibly could with as many like-minded souls as I possibly could.
All the men were together, and all the women were together, and there was some breathing and some toning, and sort of really kind of identifying with the male energy, with the phallus, and then with the female energy of the yoni. So it was very sexual, and the energy was really tangible, and I was just freaked by it. Yeah. And we were sitting apart. The men were in one area of the room and the women were in another area. So not even any contact, but still the energy was so there that it just really affected me. Yeah.
You're already enlightened. You're already love. You are already a living embodiment of the highest possible love, of every love. You are not separate from the entire universe. And all Tantra is doing is offering you doorways to reconnect with that basic truth that's already in you, which I think is quite exciting for people, because the whole personal growth movement is just full of this notion that there's something wrong with you and you've got to improve yourself all the time. And of course, do we ever feel satisfied? No. There's always more to be done. There's always more to improve on. And Tantra is radical like that, because it's coming from, you're already so beautiful, so much more beautiful than you can imagine in your wildest dreams.
In loving myself more deeply, I'm able to actually love others. And so what do you do with that? You want to share it. And this is how I'm feeling about it. Because I know even people that have been on the path, we come across challenges in life, and then all of a sudden we dive into sadness, depression, we get stuck again. So I believe that some of the techniques that I have embarked on and embraced and actually worked very deeply with, they've really helped me to come out on the other end and not stay stuck for so long. So I'm able to cycle through, not to say that challenges don't happen in life, they're ongoing, but I'm able to cycle through it and actually be really present with my emotions, my thinking, my old beliefs and set patterns and thoughts about it, and to be able to just evolve out of it onto a much higher level of awareness and understanding of how I actually created and manifested some of my problems in relationship, and my
wonderful partner has been by my side for 7 years. We're going on 8 years this year. And I don't think that if it wasn't for Tantra that we would have actually made it through. I think it would have been just one of those, you're not good enough, you're horrible, you're this, you're that, and then we would have broken up. But because of being on the path of Tantra, and we both took every step of the way very consciously and said, okay, do we want to go to the next step? Yes, okay, let's do it. And, you know, either loved or hated every minute of it, but still kept going. Okay, what do you want to do? Oh, yes, no, okay, let's do it. And each step of the way, we went together like that, and then came out of it into more love, more compassion for both ourselves and for each other.
So you can do mudras, you can do chanting, you can do prayers, but the most important thing is attitude. And if the man has an attitude of devotion and service and holding his female as a beloved, then he can really start to access some of the secrets of Tantra.
Basically what we do with raw sexual energy as an individual when you may not necessarily have a love partner at the moment. So it's really important to know that actually we need to harness the raw sexual energy. We are sexual beings. We're here through sex. We've been created, apart from test tubes kids, we've been created through the actual act of sexual union. So it's really important to honor the fact that we have got sexual urges, and also, you know, also Buddhist monks use sexual energy to transmute, to take that raw sexual energy, to take that raw, say, anger, and bring it up through the heart, and then transmute it, change it into something, a very beautiful, refined expression.
Sitting opposite somebody, not touching, and he was having a lot of energy moving. It was an awareness and an enlightenment intensive workshop, and he was having very sort of tantric experiences, and just sitting opposite him, then I also began to tune into that, and I was having a low-level orgasm, and I thought, well, this wouldn't have happened a few years ago. And it's quite amazing to actually, without any touch or not even being in a tantric setting, that I can still feel that.
I like to work with a scripture, a Tantra scripture, which is called the Vijnana Tantra. And in that there's 112 methods of meditation. Those methods cover the whole spectrum of human life experience. And the sutras, which describe these different meditations or practices, really go in depth into emotions, into mental states, into the senses, into sexuality, into subtle energy. So everything that the human being is involved in brings awareness to that. So we can apply those methods to help people come out of any kind of distortion that they might be experiencing, or any kind of sexual dysfunction, any kind of neurosis, you could say. And as they do the practice, it will automatically help to bring about balance of body, mind, and spirit.
I do believe that we all have a place that as we come into our hearts, you know, this heart, this huge intelligence of the heart, which is a lot bigger than the intelligence of our mind. That we use our mind, it's very important. That actually, the heart intelligence is really actually very large and wonderful. And when we receive information, the first point it hits is our heart. Actually, it's later on we process and we go what. But actually, the first point is that it's like a feeling. It's a bodily thing. You know, it's not our head that we work that out later. It's our heart that really receives everything. And I think it's just really reconnecting and retraining people to come back to their hearts, to come back to their dreams, their wishes, that childlike place where you go, oh, I'm excited, I want, and allow yourself to be a channel for your own creativity, a channel for love. And it's just really to support people, to remind people that they are acceptable, they are lovable, and in a way to step through shame, to step through the ways they abandon themselves, to step through their blocks and dare to step into their heart again.
By changing themselves, by transforming their own inner being, our own hearts, our own love, by loving ourselves and accepting ourselves more, we can actually change the outside, what's going on in our lives. We can't actually change things that are outside, but if we change, things around us do change. But like the butterfly effect, just putting that pebble into the pond and the ripple goes out. So we're actually sort of giving out the love, and then we can get the love back, sharing the love. Get in touch with that, our sacred sensuality, our real creativity within us, and then bring that in with the sacred spirituality to be expressed through the sacred heart, which is with love and honour and acceptance and forgiveness of ourselves and who we are, and to bring that creativity into life, into everyday activities and life. So it isn't about just a sexual thing, it's about our own creativity and our own joy and enjoyment of life, to bring that forward, to be able to express that with our families and our friends and our partners in whatever creative activities we may be doing.
My experience is a little different to a lot of women that come to Tantra. I didn't particularly have a lot of sexual wounding. I was able to have a lot of sexual relationships. My difficulty was in the heart and with experiencing love and creating lasting love. I felt quite isolated and lonely, even though I had friends, and I did have boyfriends, but it never lasted very long. So I felt very without love, really. And through doing Tantra, I've been able to awaken to love in ways that I couldn't have imagined. In very personal ways, certainly through self-love and honouring myself as a woman. That was a big difficulty for me. And through being around other women who are very accepting of themselves and their bodies, that has so helped me to come to that place in myself. And also to open to love towards a man as well, in a way that there was so much fear for me. I was incredibly scared to do that, and that's what the difficulty was. It wasn't them, as much as I'd like to think it was. The difficulty was in me, and Tantra has been the number one thing that's helped me dissolve that difficulty and get through that difficulty.
I find that if I'm truly focusing on love, that is the healer of everything. Anything that I've experienced in my life is embraced in that understanding and is totally healed. So for me, it's about the love that I'm giving from my heart outwards that is healing. It's not so much what I'm receiving from other people, but more about how I can expand and offer up love from myself, and seeing God in other people is what really does heal my state of mind. My understanding is that our state of mind comes from a number of conditioned beliefs, and the unconditioned mind has no judgment and is just pure in itself. The natural mind is just pure in itself. And just touching on that, it's more of a deprogramming as opposed to taking anything more in. It's more of an undoing and just resting in this awareness of pure love and unconditional sharing from what comes from my heart outwards.
It's really amazing to see everyone softening and opening, and people who perhaps haven't even done a workshop before, they're quite new to this, and people of all ages, people who may be married for 20 years, maybe lost a partner, and during that time, that 20 years of marriage, have never perhaps been really intimate with that partner, particularly the English thing, and suddenly they think, oh my God, there's all this, and with strangers, and hugging and opening, and people's faces soften, their eyes shine, and it's quite, oh my God, in just a few days, it's quite amazing the transformation that can happen. The Tantra is amazing, an amazing way of raising consciousness, becoming more aware. Much more aware of my body. I do a lot of other therapies and things where I'm aware of my body, and with the Tantra, just to feel those subtle energies moving is quite amazing, really. Yeah.
many people do think that Tantra is about, learning certain techniques, particularly sexual techniques, and my own experience is that's not the case. My experience is that if you work with your energy body, you open your energy channels, and certainly then if you have an experience your partner's doing the same thing, you put those two people together, and it's like putting those two practices together, and that's what gives the different experience. But the way you get to that is by working with your the energy channels in your body, with the emotion, which means if you're working with the energy in the body, energy includes emotions as well as sexual energy, and it includes sort of working with, when you work with the emotions, you're expanding your consciousness. So it really is a very holistic practice, at least as I've been taught it and as I practice it.
Because truly Tantra is the light of the world.
I feel passionately about the possibilities available to each of us at any given moment to have a beautiful, heart-centered, intimate connection. And Tantra is one way that offers a very practical, dot-to-dot, inviting and juicy way of doing that.
What I would like to share with you is a beautiful poem that was written last week, actually, on the drive back from our workshop. It was a beautiful couple, and a beautiful goddess, priestess. It's called Love Ritual, and it was written by Katinka. My lover is my consort, tantric priest. He bows before me, eyes adoring. His gaze an incantation, sweet devotion in his honoring. His kisses adorn me, bejeweled is my body, awakening my senses. His touch opens me, his love my healing. Star-crowned I am. His feather stroke has learned the secret snake path of my spine, has found my kundalini gateway to ecstatic flow. His fingers ripple serpents through my being and read the skinscape of my sacred land. For I am hill and plain and valley, fertile earth beneath the sun of his caresses. In his hands my breasts are chalice, filled with joy, milk and honey. And nipples fire rising, drawn by his breath, which whispers praise songs, chanting mantras to my soul. He invokes the source currents of delight, and I speak in tongues, language of desire. His tongue anoints my sex with pleasure. He worships at my temple. He tastes my nectar, oracle of my inner sanctum, blessed with deep wisdom of worldless scriptures. He intones prayers of love at my altar. Surrendering, he enters me. And I am flow and ocean ripple, hot and wet like summer rain, goddess, endless love, holy while he holds me. My lover is my consort, tantric priest. He bows before me, eyes adoring, his gaze an incantation, sweet devotion in his honoring.